In 1934, the average American family made it through the worst of the Great Depression on about $5 a week for food. No credit cards, no delivery apps, no second job, just skills, the kind your great-grandmother carried in her hands and never bothered to write down. Here's the truth. Nobody selling you anything wants you to hear. You were never broke because you had too little. You were broke because you forgot how to do things yourself. Number 7 on this list quietly fed families through 2 world wars. And number 1 could cut a grocery bill in half without a single coupon. Before we start, hit that subscribe button. Let's count down 20 forgotten skills that prove you don't need more money. Number 20. Hanging laundry on the line. Before a dryer hummed in every basement, a rope strung between 2 posts was the beating heart of wash day. Housewives pinned shirts and sheets to the line and let the sun and wind do the work a machine now does for a fistful of quarters every month. The skill was in the order. Heavy overalls on the outer lines where the wind hit hardest, delicates in the shade, everything hung by the seams so it dried without a wrinkle. Sunlight bleached stains white and burned out odors no soap could reach. A clothespin bag swung by the back door, and the smell of linens dried in open air was something no dryer sheet has ever matched. A dryer costs a household real dollars every single month it runs. The line costs nothing but 10 minutes and a patch of sky. Today, most people have never smelled a sun-dried sheet, and they pay every month for the privilege of forgetting. Number 19. Cutting hair at home. There was a time when a kitchen chair, a towel, and a pair of scissors were all a family needed to look presentable for church. Mothers learned to hold the comb steady and snip in even rows, working around cowlicks by feel, trimming a boy's neckline with a straight razor and a steady hand. Fathers got their sideburns squared off by lamplight on Sunday evening. A pair of good shears cost $1 and lasted 20 years, while a barber wanted a quarter a head, real money when there were 6 heads to trim. Children squirmed under the towel, complaining about the itch, while the radio played and hair drifted onto spread newspaper. The confidence to pick up scissors and simply do it was passed from mother to daughter without a lesson. Today, a single family's haircuts can run past $1,000 a year, and most of us have convinced ourselves it's a job for professionals only. Our grandmothers would have laughed at the bill. Number 18. Mixing your own cleaning supplies. Long before the cleaning aisle stretched 40 feet and every surface demanded its own bottle, a jug of white vinegar and a box of baking soda cleaned the entire house. Housewives cut vinegar with water for windows that dried streak-free, scrubbed sinks with soda paste until they gleamed, and freshened a musty rug with a dusting left overnight. A splash of ammonia took grease off the stove. Lemon rinds sweetened the drain. The whole arsenal cost pocket change and sat under every sink in America. Children watched their mothers polish a mirror with newspaper and vinegar and never questioned why the glass came out clearer than anything a spray could manage. Today, a household drops real money each month on a dozen specialized cleaners. Most of them the same few ingredients dressed up in bright plastic and scented to smell like a product. We pay for the bottle, the marketing, and the fear that plain vinegar somehow isn't enough. It always was. Number 17. Sharpening your own knives and tools. A dull knife was considered a small disgrace in a working household, a sign that someone had stopped paying attention. Men and women alike knew how to draw a blade across a whetstone at the right angle, back and forth in slow strokes, testing the edge on a thumbnail until it bit. An oiled stone cost a few cents and outlasted its owner. The same skill kept axes, chisels, and garden shears working like new, saving the cost of replacing tools that only needed an edge. You'd hear the rhythmic scrape from the back porch on a quiet evening, the sound of a man restoring something instead of buying its replacement. A sharp knife did the work faster and safer, and a well-kept axe split a winter's firewood without complaint. Today, people throw out dull knives or pay to have them sharpened, never learning the 10-minute skill that once kept an entire tool shed in service for a lifetime. We replace what we could have simply restored. Number 16, darning socks. First pattern break because this one saved more money than anyone ever counted. When a hole opened at the heel of a wool sock, no one threw it away. Out came the darning egg, a smooth wooden knob slipped inside to hold the shape, and with a needle and matching yarn, the whole was rewoven thread by thread, a tiny loom worked by hand. The finished mend was nearly invisible and stronger than the original weave. A darned sock lasted years past the day it first wore thin. Grandmothers kept a whole basket of them by the fire, working through the pile while the family talked, their hands moving without needing to look. A skein of darning wool cost a nickel and mended a season's worth of holes. Today, a hole in a sock means a trip to the store and a new 3-pack, and the very phrase darning egg sounds like something from a museum. We've quietly decided our clothes are disposable, and our wallets pay the difference every single year. Number 15, patching and making do. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. That was the whole philosophy of a generation, printed on posters and stitched into memory. A torn knee got a patch cut from an old shirt tail, sewn down with a border of tight stitches that outlived the pants. A frayed collar was turned inside out and reset so the worn edge disappeared. Flour and feed came in printed cotton sacks, and companies competed to make the prettiest patterns because they knew every yard would become a dress, an apron, or a quilt. Nothing was too far gone to save. Mothers taught daughters to let out a hem as a child grew, to move buttons, to salvage the good cloth from a ruined garment. A spool of thread cost a nickel and clothed a family for a season. Today we buy fast fashion by the armful and discard it by the bagful, spending more to own clothes we never learned to keep. The skill to make it do was worth more than the money we thought we needed. Number 14, resoling and repairing shoes. A good pair of shoes was an investment, and no one let a worn sole send them to the store. Families kept a cast iron shoe last in the closet, a foot-shaped anvil for holding a shoe steady while a new sole or heel was tacked on, or a hole was patched with a leather scrap and glue. Cobbler kits sold for a couple of dollars and paid for themselves the first week. Children handed shoes down through 3 or 4 siblings, each pair resoled again and again until the leather itself surrendered. The smell of shoe polish and neat's foot oil was Sunday morning in a lot of households. Boots buffed to a shine on the back step. A good sole ran a few cents against the dollars a new pair demanded. Today, shoes are built to be thrown away, glued instead of stitched so they cannot be mended, and a whole craft has vanished from the American home. We spend more replacing what we were never taught to repair. Number 13, fixing furniture instead of replacing it. When a chair leg loosened or a cushion went flat, nobody hauled the piece to the curb. A wobbly joint got re-glued and clamped overnight. A sagging seat was re-caned or re-woven with a spool of rush that cost almost nothing. Worn upholstery came off in careful pieces and went back on in fresh fabric, the old tacks pulled and saved in a coffee can for the next job. Solid wood furniture was built to be taken apart and put back together, and families expected a good table to serve grandchildren. Fathers kept a drawer of hardware, hinges, and glue for exactly these repairs, and a Saturday afternoon brought a tired old dresser back to life. A yard of upholstery fabric cost less than $1 against the price of a new sofa. Today we buy furniture that arrives in a flat box and cannot survive a single move, then replace the whole thing when one part fails. We traded pieces that lasted generations for pieces that barely last a lease. Number 12. Making stock from scraps and bones. Nothing left a thrifty kitchen without giving up its last bit of flavor. The carcass of the Sunday chicken, the ham bone, the onion skins and carrot tops and celery ends, most people throw away. All of it went into a big pot with water and simmered for hours until it turned into rich golden stock. That stock became soup, gravy, the base of a dozen meals stretched from scraps that cost nothing because they'd already been paid for. The smell of it filled the house on a cold afternoon. The promise of supper coming from what looked like garbage. A cook who kept a stock pot never wasted a bone in her life. Housewives saved vegetable trimmings in a bag in the icebox until there was enough for a batch. Today, those same scraps go straight to the trash, and we buy stock in cartons, paying real money for water flavored with what we threw out that morning. The pot cost nothing. We just forgot to fill it. Number 11. Rendering lard and saving fat. Second pattern break, and this one the food companies spent millions to make you forget. Every drop of fat from cooking was treasure in an American kitchen. Bacon grease went into a can on the back of the stove, strained and saved for frying eggs, greasing pans, and starting a fire under a pot of beans. Fat trimmed from a roast was rendered slow into snow-white lard that kept for months without refrigeration and made pie crusts so flaky no shortening has ever matched them. During the war, families even turned rendered fat back into the butcher because glycerin from kitchen grease went to the war effort. A pound of lard rendered at home cost nothing but the fat you already had. Then advertising convinced America that animal fat was the enemy, and shortening in a can was modern and clean. We threw out the grease can, bought oil by the jug, and lost both the savings and the flavor. Our grandmothers were quietly right the whole time, and it cost us to forget them. Number 10. Baking bread from scratch. A 5-cent loaf of store bread was a luxury when flour by the bag made a week of loaves for the same price. Housewives kept a crock of starter or a packet of yeast and turned out bread that filled the whole house with a smell store bread has never had. The skill was in the hands, knowing when the dough had risen enough by the spring of it under a fingertip, when the crust rang hollow, when the loaf was done. A single bag of flour cost a fraction of the bread it made, and the leftover crusts became stuffing, breadcrumbs, and bread pudding. Children came running when the loaves came out, begging for the heel while it was still too hot to butter. Baking day was a rhythm the whole household lived around. Today, most of us pay bakery prices for bread and treat homemade loaves as a hobby for the ambitious. But a pantry, a bowl, and an afternoon still turned pennies of flour into a week of bread. The skill never went anywhere. We just stopped using it. Number 9. Churning your own butter. When a family kept a cow, or even bought cream cheap from a neighbor who did, butter came from a churn on the back porch, not a store shelf. Cream was poured into the churn and worked with a plunger or crank until the fat broke and gathered into golden clumps, then rinsed, salted, and pressed into a mold. What was left, the buttermilk, went straight into biscuits and pancakes, so nothing was wasted. Children took turns at the crank, arms aching, watching the glass for the moment the butter came. A pound of homemade butter cost a fraction of the store price and tasted like nothing you can buy today. The rhythm of the churn was the sound of a household that fed itself. When refrigeration and mass dairies made store butter cheap and easy, the churns went to the attic. Today we pay premium prices for artisan butter and treat it as a treat, never realizing that our great-grandmothers made better every week from cream and a little patience. Number 8. Making soap from scratch. Third pattern break, because this humble skill kept whole families clean for almost nothing. Soap making was a fixture of the American home, a way to turn saved fat and wood ash into something you would otherwise pay for every week. Housewives combined rendered lard with lye, stirred until it thickened to a pudding, poured it into wooden molds, and let it cure for weeks into hard bars that washed everything from dishes to overalls to children. The ingredients were things a household already had or could get for pennies. It took care. Lye was dangerous and the measurements had to be right, but a single batch made months of soap. The smell of a fresh cure hung in the cellar, plain and clean. Families made it in big batches in autumn to last the winter. Today, soap making has become a boutique hobby with $15 bars, and we buy in plastic what our grandmothers made in a kettle. The skill that once cost nothing now sells as luxury, and most of us have no idea it was ever free. Number 7. Preserving eggs for winter. This is the one that quietly fed families through the lean months. Hens lay heavily in spring and summer, then nearly stop in the cold, so a smart household preserved the surplus while it was free. The old method was water glassing, submerging fresh, unwashed eggs in a solution that sealed the shells and kept them good for months, packed in a crock in the cool cellar. Come January, when a store egg was dear and scarce, the family reached into the crock and pulled out eggs nearly as fresh as the day they went in. Others packed eggs in salt or lard, or greased each shell by hand. A crock of preserved eggs cost almost nothing and carried a household through the hungry gap. It was insurance you could eat. Grandmothers knew exactly how many dozen to put up to reach spring. Today we buy eggs by the dozen year-round and never think about the season, paying whatever the shelf demands. The skill of storing abundance against scarcity, the very heart of thrift, has all but disappeared. Number 6. Pickling and fermenting. Before refrigeration, a jar of brine was how you made a summer garden last until spring. Cucumbers became pickles, cabbage became sauerkraut, and every surplus vegetable found its way into a crock of salt water where thyme and bacteria turned it tangy and preserved it for months. The skill was in the ratio and the patience, knowing how much salt, how long to wait, how to skim the crock and keep the vegetables under the brine. A head of cabbage and a handful of salt made a gallon of kraut that fed a family all winter and kept them healthy when fresh food was gone. The sharp, sour smell of a fermenting crock in the cellar meant a household that had planned ahead. Children wrinkled their noses and grew to crave it. Today, fermented foods sell as gourmet health items at premium prices, and most people are afraid to try what their great-grandmothers did in a bucket. We buy the jar. They filled the crock. The savings were enormous, and so was the loss. Number 5. Home canning. When the garden or the orchard came in all at once, canning was how a family locked a whole season into jars. Housewives spent hot August days over a boiling water bath, filling mason jars with tomatoes, green beans, peaches, and jam, sealing each with a lid that popped when it set. A cellar shelf lined with glowing jars was a household's real wealth, the difference between eating well through winter and going without. The skill demanded care, the right times, the right seals, or a jar would spoil. But a bushel of tomatoes bought cheap in season became a year of sauce for the cost of the jars alone. And the jars lasted decades. Children helped snap beans on the porch while the kettle roared inside. The pride of a full pantry was something you could see. Today we buy canned goods by the case, paying year-round prices for food someone else preserved, while the equipment gathers dust. A single summer of canning can fill a family's shelves for the cost of the produce and a little sweat. Number 4. Keeping a root cellar. Before every home had a humming refrigerator and a freezer in the garage, families stored a whole harvest underground for free. A root cellar, a cool, dark, earthen room dug into a hillside or under the house, kept potatoes, carrots, apples, cabbages, and squash fresh for months without a watt of electricity. The skill was in knowing what stored well and how. Apples wrapped in newspaper so one bad one didn't spoil the rest. Carrots buried in damp sand. Potatoes kept away from onions so neither turned. A well-managed cellar carried a household from the last of the garden all the way to the first of spring. The cool, earthy smell of one was the smell of security. It cost nothing to run and never broke down. Today we pay every month to power freezers and refrigerators and buy produce shipped from thousands of miles away, while the cellar, free, silent, and reliable, has vanished from the American home. Our grandparents stored a year of food in the ground for nothing. Number 3, raising backyard chickens. A small flock in the yard was one of the smartest investments a family could make. A dozen hens, fed on kitchen scraps and garden weeds, laid enough eggs to feed a household and sell the surplus to neighbors for a little cash. The skill was simple but real, knowing how to keep them warm in winter, safe from foxes, and laying through the seasons. Chickens turned garbage into breakfast, ate the bugs off the garden, and left behind the best fertilizer a vegetable patch could ask for. Children gathered eggs each morning, warm from the nest, and learned early where food came from. A hen cost little and paid for herself in weeks. When the old bird stopped laying, she became Sunday dinner, and nothing was wasted. Then suburbs banned them, and cheap store eggs made the whole thing seem old-fashioned. Today, with egg prices swinging wildly, a backyard flock looks less like nostalgia and more like wisdom. Our grandparents knew that a handful of hens meant food security no paycheck could match. Number 2, foraging and knowing the land. There was a time when a walk in the woods was a grocery run. Families knew which mushrooms were safe, where the wild blackberries ripened in July, which greens came up first in spring, and how to tap a maple for syrup. Whole meals came from land nobody owned and no one charged for. The skill was knowledge passed down carefully, which plant fed you and which one didn't, when to pick and where to look. A morning of foraging brought home berries for pie, greens for the pot, and nuts to store for winter. All of it free to anyone who knew how to look. Fishing a creek or hunting a rabbit stretched a food budget that had already run thin. Children learned the names of plants, the way they learned the alphabet. Today, most of us walk past $100 of free food on every hike and never see it, because the knowledge died with the people who held it. The land still gives. We simply forgot how to receive it. And finally, number 1, the kitchen garden. Nothing on this list proves the point more completely than a patch of dirt out the back door. During the World Wars, home gardens supplied nearly half of all the fresh vegetables Americans ate, grown on lawns, in vacant lots, and along back fences by people who had never farmed a day before. A packet of seeds cost a few cents and returned a summer of food. The skill was everything a household needed to eat: when to plant, how to water, how to save seeds from the best plants, so next year's garden cost nothing at all. Families grew tomatoes, beans, squash, and greens in a space no bigger than a parking spot, and put fresh food on the table for the price of a little labor. Children pulled carrots from the ground and ate them dirt and all. The smell of turned earth in spring meant the grocery bill was about to shrink. Seed saving made the whole thing self-renewing. Free food that planted itself again every year, generation after generation. Today we pay top dollar for produce trucked across the country. While our yards grow nothing but grass, we pay to cut. The most powerful money-saving skill ever known isn't complicated or expensive. It's a seed, some soil, and the knowledge our great-grandparents took for granted. So there they are, 20 skills that once ran an entire household on almost nothing. Not one of them required more money. Every single one required knowing how. That was the whole secret our grandparents understood, and we somehow let slip away. Thrift was never about earning more. It was about needing less, because your hands could do the rest. Here's my challenge. Pick one this week. Just one. Bake the bread, sharpen the knife, plant the seeds, patch the pants. Then come back and tell me in the comments which one you tried and whether your great-grandmother knew something the rest of us forgot. Because they weren't poor for lacking money. They were rich in the one thing we can't buy back. Now you know it too.